supervise and train pre-licensed therapists on how to do sex therapy. I also really believe that the work that we do can be done in a coaching realm.
The Sex Talk.
One of the reasons I got into this business of certifying coaches to work within the sex and intimacy coaching realm is because while I am a therapist and I'm a licensed therapist and I have a degree, a master's in clinical psychology, and I did my hours, and I've made a couple of videos on this topic about why I think that it's important to have this coaching business. And it's because I work as a coach. I did a lot of education to understand what it meant to be a therapist, and then realized that my calling was actually to educate and to do goal-oriented, short-term counseling is better to describe what I wanted to do, not like long-term psychotherapy. So what I understand about myself now is that I didn't need to go to do all that school. I'm glad I did, because it's taught me a lot. But the thing that I don't like about it, and the reason I want to get out of it, and the reason I have this program, is so that other people don't have to go through it, because you don't have to go through all of that if you want to do the work that I did. And you can be so much more lucrative by not doing it, by not taking out, hundreds and thousands of dollars of student loans, and by not, by trusting the process and by trusting yourself. We do so much, we can work so much better. I don't like board of ethics. I don't like all of these governing boards that make these arbitrary rules. And I understand that the rules are there to protect you and they're there to protect the client. But frankly, what happens sometimes is the rules don't protect the clients. They actually sometimes do more harm than good, as well as for the coach or the therapist that's working with them. And we end up overextending ourselves in areas where we necessarily shouldn't, because of some arbitrary board of ethics. And arbitrary is a strong word, because boards come about because we do need regulation, right? We do need support. We do need community. However, I think that a lot of these boards end up, like I said, doing more harm than good. So my program is really like about that, like the sexual revolution, and really unlearning everything that people have learned around religion and stigma and shame. And you don't need a bunch of school to learn that. In fact, school might tend to do the opposite and indoctrinate you. You actually have to seek out this type of education. I got really lucky because I did my undergrad at San Francisco State during a time where, San Francisco State's a very liberal school. It's also a very social justice political school. And I didn't realize that when I had applied there. I just happened upon it. And I learned, that's where I learned. I did all my women's studies courses. I did a human sexuality minor, not technically a minor. It's like a cluster that you have to do when you become a upper division in your undergrad program. And so I did mine in human sexuality. The best class I ever took in my undergrad program was a variations in human sexuality class. It's well known. It's at San Francisco State University. It is a really phenomenal, well-known class over 800 students every semester. And this class talked about everything under the sun except heterosexuality. It was amazing. It's one of those classes where everyone feels inclusive, everyone's welcome, everyone's story is accepted and allowed. This is not something that you can learn in most programs. My undergrad program had that. Fast forward to my graduate program at a very conservative university, a Christian university. I ended up going to that school because they accepted me and it was local. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. And my mother said to me, I said, Mom, should I wait another year and apply to all these other schools? My mom said, Mo, just do what's in front of you. And I just dove in and I went to Pepperdine University. I got a great education there. It's a good school, but it's Christian based. So human sexuality is not at the top of their list. And so it's just something that we can't even necessarily learn from school. It's not something that we can learn. It's not something that can necessarily even be governed by some governing board. So yes, we've got social workers that work as sex therapists. I've got licensed marriage and family therapists. We're all governed by several boards. First of all, we've got the California Board of Behavioral Science. These are the people that give us our licenses. We have to maintain our license with them. That means we cannot be convicted of a crime. We can't even get a DUI. Then we will lose our license to practice therapy. So there's a lot of fear, right? It's kind of a fear-based thing. It perpetuates us into being, staying in a straight line as citizens. On top of that, there are other governing boards. There's the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. There's the National Association of Social Workers. There's the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. So there's CAMT, NASW, ASECT. These are all the ones that I just kind of mentioned. They're all private. Like, they're not even giving you your license, but they are kind of the standard when it comes to the standard of practice in a certain area. So people look to these governing boards, people look to CAMT and ASECT and NASW to give us the standards, to dictate or tell us how to run our practice. And we need them because we need support. We don't want to be just flailing out here. And I understand in the coaching world, a lot of that is people can be like, well, where do I go? I had one of my students ask me today, like, where do I go to get supervision around my cases? And it's true. Like, my course is we're still developing all of that. But, I think it's important to recognize that sometimes these boards do more harm than good. And so coaching allows us a little bit more legroom. And so even though I'm licensed, even though I'm in this realm as a therapist and I have a group practice where I have several therapists and I still even supervise and train pre-licensed therapists on how to do sex therapy, I also really believe that the work that we do can be done in a coaching realm. Therapy has helped me to understand a lot of these things, the boundaries, the legal and ethical issues, and those are important. And that's what I also teach in the course. So the legal and ethical rules, the values, all of those things, they're important things for us to know and remember. And I think that you don't have to spend as much time if what your goal is to do to see clients and sort of change their narrative around sexuality, because there's a lot of pressure there's just a lot of pressure, and it prevents us sometimes, I think, from showing up authentically for our clients, for showing up authentically in our practices. For many years, I didn't coach. I was very staunch about, well, I'm a therapist and I only work in the state of California. And a woman that I used to write for, a magazine that I used to write for, the owner of the magazine, basically was like, Mo, and she was also had her license in therapy, but she was running this magazine. And basically, you know, like, Mo, you're doing people a disservice by not offering your services in other areas. Like, you live in Los Angeles. Like, Los Angeles doesn't need sex positive therapy. Well, she was wrong about that. Los Angeles, if any place, needs sex positive therapy. Everywhere needs it. But you're really doing a disservice not making yourself available to other places, remote places where people can't access sex positive therapy and coaches. So that was in 2007, 2008, when I was first starting out, and I was like, just spent so much money going to school, had spent so much time getting my hours, had passed the exam. You know, that was 15 years ago, and I was like, I've spent so much time and money. But you know what I started doing? I was coaching. I was working on, while I was trying to build my practice, I was working online, and this is early days when Zoom wasn't even around, so maybe Skype was, but there were these platforms where you could provide counseling, like kind of like on call, and they would pay, and they would call from anywhere, and they would call and they'd be anonymous, and I'd have a profile that's like, you know, here's my name, I do sex therapy, I work with these kind of issues. So people would call and pay my hourly rate, and they would maybe only stay on the phone for 30 minutes, 20 minutes. They wouldn't necessarily be on the phone for a full hour. And it wasn't a consistent thing. Like, they would call when they felt like they needed it. So if I had my phone handy, I could answer the phone. Well, what ended up happening was they were all out of state. They weren't in state, so I was coaching. I was doing it while I was building my practice. I was already coaching. I was already doing online, remote counseling. Under the, it was like I think it was called Live Person or Presto Experts or something like that. I did it for a really long time, and it helped me build my practice. And between clients, when I would just turn it on and people would call, and I would make my money, and I learned a lot by doing that work. And I taught myself how to be a sex and relationship therapist and coach. I taught myself that because that wasn't taught to me in school. So really what I'm saying is, like, all of these boards really, they bore me at the end of the day. And I think that we do much better work when we show up authentically as ourselves and just lean into the work and really do the work. I spent a lot of years going to school, and I want you to not have to do that if you don't want to do that. I want you to be able to, if you want a lucrative business as a sex and relationship coach, as an intimacy coach, to be able to do that within a year, less than a year. It takes time to build up the repertoire and the skills, but I want you to be able to start doing that sooner than later. And so if that's something that aligns with you and aligns with your vision, I really call on you to check out my course. Honestly, I don't want you to sign up for my course if it's not right for you. Like, I don't necessarily think this course is for everyone. It's not. It's for people that believe in it, that want this change, that don't care about the degrees and the letters, and really just want to get to work and make a change and be impactful. And in today's age, with social media, with all the tools that we have at our arsenal, we really need to rethink academia on a lot of levels. Academia is expensive. It is an antiquated institution. I have many friends that work in academia. They're overworked and underpaid and extremely brilliant, and I don't think that they're doing what they should be doing. But there's this idea that my generation grew up with, that academia is this like revered, like you get to make all these changes in the world. But do you really? Like, I feel like a lot of that has changed. Like, are we questioning academia? Why is it still an institution that everybody really believes in? I'm going to get so much shit for this because I have so many friends that are professors. But I also have I also know a lot of people that work in academia that are like, I want to do something else. I'm not making enough money. I'm burnt out. And this is for you too. You don't need to be a professor anymore. If you're burnt out, this is for you too. This is an opportunity for all of us to start questioning the systems and structures that are in place. Because this is a structural issue. This is a systemic issue we have been steeped in for a really, really long time. Academia is part of that system. And, I'm always getting political, and I'm always gonna be political about it, because while academia has helped me a lot, I'm also starting to see like where it came from, how it started. And so I want to question lots of things, but today I'm just going to question the boards, the legal boards, the ethical boards. They're good for a certain they're good for a lot of things, but when you run your own business and you're seeing clients and you're doing your own work with clients, get a couple of second opinions around things that have a gray area. Like, you don't have to go buy things by the book all the time if it doesn't feel like it's going to suit the situation. So look at that. Talk to some other people, get a few different opinions, and really try to feel what's happening in your body. I talk about this a lot too. How do you feel in your body? What's going on? Does it make your stomach, do you get a weird feeling in your stomach, a pit in your stomach? Is your heart beating faster? Are your palms getting sweaty? Is your vision getting blurry? Can you not breathe? Those types of things are signs that something isn't in alignment. Something isn't feel right for you. And you get to make choices as a coach, as a therapist, as a business owner. You get to make those choices. You get to look at them. So my point is don't just blindly do what they're telling you to do. And this is across the board, not just for boards that I'm bored with, but across the board for relationships, sexuality. The church gives you all sorts of rules around sex. Your parents told you all sorts of stuff about relationships. At the end of the day, question everything and make your own decisions. That's really everything that I stand for, and everything that I teach in my programs, and everything that I help my clients with. And if any of that aligns with you, let's work together. I would love to work with you either as a student, as a client, as a colleague. Let's make some real changes in this world together. All right, thanks. Bye.
The Sex Talk.